Welcome back to RegenAG News. I'm your host, Roger McKinley. Today, we're diving headfirst into a hot topic that gets thrown around at trade shows, in farm circles, and even online. Is soil health BS? Now, before you roll your eyes or lean in too hard, hear me out. We get this question all the time, but it's not really about whether soil health is real. It's about how it's being talked about, and more importantly, how it's being applied or misapplied on real farms under real pressure. So let's cut through the buzzwords and get to the point. Is your soil healthy or is it functioning? Because there's a big difference. At RegenAG, we don't make bold statements just for the clicks. We say things with a sense of urgency because farmers don't have the luxury of time. They're under pressure to perform right now. Crops have to pay, leases have timelines, and weather doesn't wait. That's why the conversation around soil function is far more relevant for most growers today than the broad, abstract idea of soil health. Here's the big question. What's the difference? Well, let me break it down for all of you. Soil health is the long-term biological, chemical, and physical condition of your soil. It's the organic matter, the aggregate stability, the microbial populations, the big picture stuff that takes years to build. Soil function, on the other hand, is about how your soil performs right now. Is it biologically active? Is it suppressing disease? Are your nutrients available and utilized efficiently? Is it resilient this season? Most farmers aren't dealing in 10-year windows, especially in regions like the Pacific Northwest. In Idaho, Washington, and Oregon, a huge portion of farmland is leased, and growers are in and out of those fields every 1 to 3 years. That completely changes the game. Let's keep context in perspective. So let's say you're leasing 400 acres for a 2-year contract. Are you really going to invest in a 5-year cover crop plan? Build organic matter you'll never benefit from. Of course not. But that doesn't mean you abandon regenerative principles altogether. It means you shift focus. You go from long-term soil health to immediate soil function. There's a growing issue in the way we talk about soil health, and it's rooted in a lack of specificity. Imagine going to the doctor because you keep getting sick. You're worn down, low energy, and fighting off constant colds. Now imagine that doctor looks at you and simply says, you just need to live a healthier lifestyle. Sure, it sounds good, maybe it even feels right, but it doesn't solve the problem. Because what if the real issue is a vitamin D deficiency, or maybe a critical mineral imbalance that's weakening your immune system? Without blood work, without data, we'd never know. You can eat kale and jog every morning, but if your immune system is missing key inputs, you're just guessing. And in the meantime, you're still sick. That's the same mistake we make in agronomy. Now, conventional ag actually does something very well. It treats specific problems with specific solutions. If a field scout finds powdery mildew, we don't reach for a generic jug labeled fungicide. We pull out the label book. We get precise. There are products, chemistries, and rates that are known to be effective against powdery mildew. We diagnose it, we treat it, and more often than not, we get results. But here's the catch. Conventional ag almost never addresses the root cause. We spend the majority of our time and money treating symptoms, not solving the underlying issue. When a disease or pest shows up, the first question shouldn't just be, what do I spray? It should be, why is this happening in the first place? And that's where things often break down. On the flip side, regenerative agriculture has a different problem. It often becomes too philosophical, too dogmatic. We hear phrases like build soil health, restore the microbiome, reduce inputs. And yes, those are all good things, but they often come with no specificity and no path to short-term results. That's like telling a farmer, just be healthier, while his field is crashing in real time. And honestly, that's why many farmers become discouraged with the soil health mantra, and rightfully so. Because while relying only on synthetic products to treat problems isn't a sustainable long-term strategy, neither is telling someone to just focus on soil health. What we really need is a better question. Why? Why is this field underperforming? Why are pests showing up here but not there? Why is nutrient uptake failing even when fertility levels look good on paper? Just like human health, we need the right diagnostics, we need the data, and we need clear, field-ready solutions that balance both immediate function and long-term improvement. Because in the real world, neither prescriptions nor lifestyle changes work in isolation. We need both, and in agronomy, the same is true. Our goal is to replace this generic approach with a much more strategic approach to meeting each farm's objectives while being good stewards of the land in the process. It's time to get surgical in our approach to soil health, which means we need to understand where the weaknesses are in the ability of our soils to function. All right, let's talk about something most growers still aren't hearing enough about: how soil biology equates to soil functionality. For the past 50 years, we've focused heavily on the chemical and physical aspects of soil, And that's not a bad thing. Those tests are critical. We know our NPK levels. We understand pH, EC, compaction, infiltration, and so on. These are the metrics we've relied on to manage crops. But here's the truth. We've been farming with two legs of a three-leg stool. And the leg we're missing? Biology. And without it, the system's unstable. Biology isn't just some fluffy regen buzzword. It's the functional workforce in the soil. We're talking about trillions of microbes that help with nutrient cycling, root signaling, disease suppression, or organic matter conversion, and even stress tolerance from drought, salinity, and heavy metals. These aren't abstract ideas. This is the machinery behind soil function. You can have all the nutrients in the world sitting in your profile, but if biology isn't active and efficient, your crop can't access them, period. So, how do we fix this? The first step is actually really simple, but most folks skip it. Step one, define your goals. Are you trying to push yield, reduce inputs, manage a disease problem, or unlock performance on short term leases without losing your shirt? Whatever your mission is, be clear. Context drives decision. Step two, test soil function. Now, this is where things get exciting because just like a standard soil test tells us about nutrient deficiencies, there's now a test that specifically measures biological functionality and one company that has made it economically viable to do so. This testing isn't brand new. You just probably haven't heard about it. In fact, their database of microbes contains over 44 million taxonomic references, and testing has been performed on more than 200 crops in over 50 different countries. You might be thinking, don't we already have biological tests for this? Yes and no. Tests like the Haney or PLFA give us some indicators of microbial activity, nitrogen availability, and other helpful metrics, but they fall short on functionality. They don't tell you if the biology is doing the job, only that it might be alive. Not just biomass, not just enzyme counts, not just respiration. We're talking about a full metagenomic scan of your soil microbiome, identifying not just who's living in your soil, but what they're doing and where the weak links are. Which pathogens are showing up before symptoms hit the crop, whether your soil biology is suppressing disease or letting it run wild, if the microbes in your system are actually unlocking phosphorus, nitrogen, and potassium, or are they just sitting on their hands? And how well your soil is handling drought stress, hormone signaling, and nutrient transport. It's like getting a full diagnostic scan of your soil's biological engine. It's what we use at RegenAG Nation to understand the biological pinch points in each field so we're not throwing darts in the dark. So, what's actually in the test? First, baseline soil health scores. Every field is scored against a massive global database. So instead of looking at your numbers in a vacuum, you're seeing how your soil stacks up across categories like biodiversity, biosustainability, resilience, and overall functionality. You're getting a benchmark, real context. Second, crop specific disease risk and biocontrol. This is huge. The test identifies the presence of specific pathogens linked to your crop, things like fusarium, botrytis, pythium, and more. But it also tells you if your soil's biology has natural biocontrol agents present, microbes that suppress those diseases before they take off. It's like knowing not just who the threat is, but whether your defense squad is active. Third, nutrient pathways and functional microbial groups. The test looks at how well your biology is mobilizing nutrients, not just whether they're present, but whether your soil is unlocking them. It scores your microbial performance across carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium cycling, and it breaks down key microbial groups responsible for nutrient solubilization and competition. This gives us a clear look at why nutrients may or may not be showing up in the plant. 4. Hormone production potential. This one's next level. The test identifies microbial activity tied to natural plant growth hormones like auxins, gibberellins, and cytokinins. These influence root development, cell division, germination, and flowering. If your crop is slow to establish or doesn't root well, this gives us another piece of the puzzle. Fifth, stress adaptation capacity. We also get data on microbial functions related to drought tolerance, salinity protection, and heavy metal resistance. Basically, how well your soil is equipping your plants to handle tough conditions, and whether biology is helping or lagging. So now we have the data and our goals in mind. What do we do with all this? With these insights in hand, we can now build field-specific, crop-specific, and goal-specific strategies. We know where the microbial workforce is strong and where it's falling short, whether the soil is naturally suppressing disease or needs help, and finally, which nutrient cycles are lagging and what to apply to unlock them. It helps us identify which regenerative ag principles will perform the best, what cover crops will be most effective, and most importantly, it helps us understand what not to spend money on. Why spend $15 an acre on a bacterial inoculant when your soil is extremely bacterial dominant? Do we know if it's necessary to spend $400 an acre on fumigation, or are we guessing? What applications will spark the system? Which biological stimulants, microbials, or enzymes could make an impact this season, not 5 years from now? This is how we connect short term performance with long term regeneration. We're not guessing, we're not hoping. We're using biological data to make informed decisions, just like we do with chemical or physical soil tests. So, is soil health BS? No, not at all. But treating it like a one size fits all solution and guessing what will make it better is that's the real issue. At RegenAG Nation, our goal is to equip farmers with tools that fit their reality, not just what looks good on a sustainability report. That starts by redefining soil function as a measurable in season priority, one backed by data, not just basic soil tests. We need the biological function of what the soil is doing now and the insight into how we can change our inputs to match our soil health goals. Because regeneration isn't just about the future, it has to work right now too. Thanks for tuning in today. And remember, context comes first. Let's make soil function part of every cropping plan. We'll see you next time on RegenAG News.